Okay, StreamYard says it's showtime. Welcome to our live Silver Lining podcast. I'm Uncle Rex. You can see my nephew Adam right here, and you see our guest, Brian Pace. We'll be introducing Brian a little bit more, but there is so much going on right now in the world. Countries are at war. Of course, we have in the United States here, we have the political election coming up. It's already started in some places. People are voting, a lot of controversy with that. It's just a crazy time. But Adam, we're going to focus back to our roots because there's lots of news about your sister.
Oh man, I thought we were going to go Trump Kamala.
Well,
right into religion. We just hit those two things right off the bat. Let's get politics and religion out of the way, and then all the comments will just let it flow. And then after that, we can do that.
When you and I are sitting here talking by ourselves, Brian would bail on us after that.
So it'll be me, you, and Brian left on the podcast.
If Brian stays.
Chit-chatting about religion and politics.
I would stay.
Thank you. As a matter of fact, I will say this to start with, speaking of religion, kind of indirectly. For some reason, right now, there's a lot of energy around the Mountains Meadow Massacre, which happened over 100 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm just saying this because I'm going to endorse a couple podcasts here. And I recommend, if you're interested in that stuff about the Mountain Meadows Massacre, our friend Mike King, who is the host of, now I'm going to forget the name of the podcast because I didn't plan this endorsement, but he has a good podcast out on it right now. So look up Mike King's, and I'll remember it at some point, or I'll look back at my books and see what it is. His podcast, I recommend that. But also, you notice we have in the audience both Kimberly and Lindsay.
Yes, Kimberly and Lindsay.
Profiling Evil. Thank you, Missy. Missy's our moderator. Thank you, Missy. Mike King has Profiling Evil, and they expect Meadows Massacre. I noticed there's some energy around that. Well, Kimberly and Lindsay started a podcast, and it's a little tough to find. And so I followed the instructions that they gave us on the Facebook group, Tyler and JJ Silver Linings podcast community. It's a little hard to find on YouTube, but it's at Jury Duty Podcast.
Oh, I thought it was Two Chicks and a Microphone.
Two Chicks and a Microphone is probably on a porn channel, Adam. And so I don't know how you found that.
Where did you come with that? Oh my. Rex is on another level today.
But anyway, we recommend. I just listened to their intro so far. I'm excited to hear more about it. So
if you're a true crimer, I think Lindsay and Kimberly, are going to talk a lot about true crime things that you'll be interested in. Both of them have great sense of humor. Kimberly's super smart. Lindsay's super witty. They're both funny, engaging. And you guys already know that. So yeah, that would be a good podcast if you're a true crimer to get a different perspective on true crime with them.
And I'll add the other half of that. Lindsay's very smart too, and Kimberly's very witty also.
But I should have said they're both. You're right. I don't want to give one the other. Yeah. And I want to say hi to. It's so weird all the time when I'm looking at these comments that we have. People logging in at 11:30 at night at the UK and in Scotland, like all over the world, people, they're like, oh, I caught a live. It's Saturday night, 11:30. Get to bed. But I love it. I think I keep forgetting that people all over the world watch our channel. They come here for healing. They come here for a safe place. There's people all over the world that want to be healed. There's people that want to feel like they could be in a safe place. And so that's why we would continue doing this podcast, where people who feel like they need some kind of therapy or they need some kind of help or they just want to feel good or that they come here. So all over the world, thank you guys for tuning in and being here with us.
And Kimberly's thanking us for recommending them. So we're looking forward for big things from you, Kimberly. So,
you know, Rex, we'll probably never get an invite to be on their show since neither one of us know anything about true crime.
exactly.
I mean, we were thrown into true crime because of my family, so that's where we are.
And so we recommend them, and of course we recommend Colby too. Colby's part of the reason we're doing this podcast, at least the first half. And I should explain to people watching, just so they don't say, "Man, these guys are rude. They're leaving poor Brian down there and not talking to him." But our podcast is in two parts today. The first part we're going to talk about. We want to hear your read your reactions, and talk about the news around Lori. And the second half is when we're going to turn to Brian. Brian has rich experience in mental health, and especially in equine therapy, which has been fascinating for a lot of us. So we're looking forward to the second half to hearing from Brian, but we invited him on just to be here and get a feel for the podcast.
Well, let's ask Brian now. Brian, what do you think about Lori and Chad's situation? Do you know the story? Have you heard it? What are your feelings about it?
Yeah, I mean, Rex mentioned it earlier to me, and when he brought it up, he reminded me about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that case. I mean, when you're in mental health, you hear
all the mental health cases, right?
Yeah, and the fascinating thing to me would be, is I don't know where the dots connected. There's a lot of gaps there, which you all probably filled in about how they got to this point, right? Where this all happened. I mean, from my perspective of things, it's like, well, how did you get here? How did you get to this point that now we're doing these type of behaviors? Mm-hmm. And I'm always curious of, what, and that goes back to kind of what I think Rex mentioned is some trauma and whatever else, or whatever kind of disrupted or maybe not disrupted the pattern in your life or path in your life. But how did you get to this point in your life that these things happened?
Well, I think once they got to a point of no return, then once you get to that point of no return, they're just like, okay, we've done this. So now whether you're aware of all the, whatever, you just keep going with it. I'm sure I don't think there's a going back, except for maybe Alex maybe have realized that it was a hoax and then, ended up dead. So he may be the only one that's like, oh, maybe there is going back, but we'll never know that either. But yeah, it's interesting to find out how far do people go then when they realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But they feel like, oh, I've gone too far. So there's no going back now.
No.
Well, I think there are players, Adam, that we'll talk about. And that's why we're so anxious for these new trials to happen, is we want to get more questions answered. But of course, Lori's trial's been vacated. We'll talk about that a little bit too, I'm sure. But the people around Chad and Lori that aren't dead, the survivors, some of them, I'm sure, have come to their senses. However, there's damage done. Who knows what they've done? We're hopefully going to find out more about that in the trial. But they've been affected also by this. And so a lot to talk about with that subject. Let's start with another podcast I want to recommend. Of course, Adam, of course, you would too. But Colby's podcast, Scar Wars podcast. Lori's son, Colby, again, a survivor of Lori's immediate children. And we love Colby, support him, recommend you listen because you get such a different perspective from Colby. And he's talking about Lori now wanting to, for those of you that haven't heard, probably everyone has, because we usually get this information from you, but the trial's been vacated. Lori's been ordered to get a mental exam, a couple mental exams, I guess, is the way they do it in Arizona now. And so so we don't know when, and even if, frankly, I guess realistically there'll be a trial. So I still imagine there will be, but I'm not familiar with the laws in Arizona.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I know that, the first time in Idaho, this is what I've heard, that Lori had 3 psych evals from 3 different psychiatrists or whatever that the defense got, and they all 3 agreed that Lori had some delusional, I forget the name of it, was has that delusional thing. And then the prosecution got one psychiatrist who evaluated Lori and said, no, she's fit to stand trial. But then Lori got in front of the judge and says, I'm fit. I want to go to trial. So she didn't do her lawyers any favors. She wanted to, go to trial. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but Lori may want to defend herself and be her own lawyer. I mean, it just may get crazy if there's a point where they see or sense that Lori is off her rocker, which I believe that she is. Some of you don't, and that's fine. Then I don't know what the process. I don't know what would, if a judge says, yeah, she's not fit to stand trial. And I don't know if Lori's going to tell this judge, yes, I'm fit to stand trial. I don't know what's going to happen with all that. But in my opinion, knowing Lori for my whole life, she definitely has snapped. Like something snapped in her. She's definitely not the same mental capacity that she was. And if you can kill your own kids, you are definitely mentally unstable, mentally ill. And so that's how I feel about that whole situation with that.
And just to be clear on that, the people that don't believe Lori's mentally ill are saying she's so evil and cunning. They aren't saying, no, she's fine. No one's saying that. It's just some people are saying,
well, some people are saying that. Some people say she's faking it. Yeah.
Well, faking it because she's evil,
right.
To try to get off. No one's saying she's not broken.
Yeah.
And trying to give her a pass on it. But
I think there's people trying to. There are, not everybody, but there are some.
Really? Who have you heard? Or what have you heard that's trying to?
Yeah, there's people that are like Lori's she's been evil her whole life. She's a unfit mother. She's like all these things. And when somebody brings up, well, she's delusional or she's mentally ill. No, she's not. They don't believe that she is at all.
Oh, we're saying the same thing. I'm saying it differently.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Some people are saying it's not mental illness at all. She's just evil and is always.
Yes. Yeah.
And others are saying, no, she's broken mentally.
Yeah.
And I agree that she's both.
It's both. Yeah. It's definitely both.
She's evil and mentally ill. Okay. So we got that. We got that squared. No one's giving Lori a pass.
Lori's trial was supposed to be in February. That's been postponed.
It's been vacated. And
vacated.
What vacated means? It means okay. Someone tell that. I'm sure there are people that are listening that have a real legal understanding or definition.
Of vacated.
Maynard's asking what vacated means. My understanding is it means, okay, there's no trial scheduled now. And then when the pieces come back together, mostly the mental exam, and in Idaho, when they send her to a mental exam, they didn't set any dates. They sent her off. And then when the judge was satisfied that, yes, we can proceed, then they set dates.
Yeah.
But someone can tell us, and if you would watch for that, Missy, and start, we can put the real definition of vacated up.
And I think too, with with me not wanting to go to trial, me trying to avoid going to trial, and then also not wanting to have Zach have to go to trial because it's going to be so traumatic for both of us to be in trial, be in there with Lori. So I started thinking about that because, obviously people criticize me for not wanting to get justice for the victims. And I feel like me going to this trial would be very difficult. Now, I may feel like this may be good therapy for me and Zach to go through something that painful, because I know when you go to therapy, aren't you supposed to go through a lot of pain? You're supposed to bring stuff up and get all this stuff out. It's super painful. And here I am trying to avoid all this pain that I've been through. So I'm trying to skip and avoid all the things associated with it. I started thinking, well, if there is a trial and we have to go testify, just like writing this book. If you've listened to our audiobook, when I was reading this book, I didn't realize it was going to hit me like it did. And when you read the book or hear the book, me and Rex both on certain moments get super emotional reading it. And those are things coming out again, very painful, emotionally painful as we're reading the book. But is that therapy? Is that actually helping me go forward? Would going to trial to testify actually be super painful, but would it help me move more forward to my healing, whatever that looks like? So I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
And let me give you props, Adam, for as you deal with that, because everyone has their own path of how to deal with the trauma in their life. And of course, yours is a little more acute than others. I don't know what acute means, but I want a fancy word to throw in there.
Stabbing.
But when people are trying to hide pain, a lot of people turn to alcohol, drugs, personality disorders, different factors. You've turned to pickleball. I think that's a pretty admirable choice. I
take it out on the pickleball. I hit it very hard, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and it's serving you well in the pickleball world because you're doing pretty well there with your professional status. So yeah. I am so glad you're dealing with it according to your conscience, trying to figure it out for yourself, but dealing with it in a healthy manner. You deserve the props for that. So I want to make sure to get that in there. And we'll probably hear more about that from Brian when we talk about it.
I need a horse immediately.
I get you a stick horse.
Yeah, a stick horse. No, I want a real horse to hug and love on. Pet. Yes.
Okay, this is what I was saying about Colby's. The name of the podcast is Scar Wars, like Star Wars, but scars for obvious reasons. And it is available on YouTube. I'm not sure everywhere it's available because I found it on YouTube. And we recommend that. He has a unique perspective, and anything we can do to support him, we want to do. And we love hearing his side of it. Listen, that's true crime, even about this particular subject. We want to make sure all of you can find that if you want to. So Kimberly gives us a definition of vacated. Vacated in this context just means the trial is no longer set for that date and time. So there you go. Okay, very good. Let's see. Kelly asks this question. Has your faith been tested? There's been so much trauma. I'm going to read into this, Kelly, that we're asking that of Adam. There's been trauma for everyone who's gotten emotionally involved in Tylee and JJ's disappearance and then their death. So that's everyone. Family members, of course. Adam's a closer family member than I am. So I'm gonna steer this one to you, Adam.
Faith as in my faith in what? Religion, God, faith in humanity, faith in family. What specific faith are you talking about? Or Rex, what do you think it is?
Answer the faith in God one, and then we'll see in the comments if Kelly has a different.
Okay. Yeah, my faith in God has never wavered. I wouldn't have got through this without him. There has been times where he helped me through a lot of things. So never once did and nothing on this earth that happens on this earth is ever going to shake my faith from what I feel and what I know. So yeah, my faith has never been shaken at all through any of it.
And if this didn't shake it, then that's a pretty good testament of what you.
And I know there's some people, because I have friends that had really bad things happen to them, and they go, if there was a God, he wouldn't have let that happen to me. And so I feel completely different. I feel like everybody has a right to choose right or wrong, and they deal with consequences. And obviously our family is dealing with consequences from Lori and Alex's actions. So we all have to deal with those consequences that come with people's actions. And that I think that's God's plan. I think we all have the right to choose right for wrong, and then we will have consequences to. But I know other people like, I'm never gonna, pray to God again because He let this happen to me, and that's fine. That's how you want to go about your life, or that's what you want to do. That's fine too. So I think everybody has their own way of dealing with what they want to do.
Let me put this one up. I'm not sure of the intent behind it, but just so people that are reading comments know our stance on this. Oh, I lost it now.
You have a good mind. Memorize it and repeat. Go.
I do, but I have to read it 700 times to.
Oh, please. You have a photographic memory. You're a pilot, for crying out loud.
Yes, that's what it is. I was a pilot decades ago.
And a basketball player. You have to remember plays.
That's true. Well, it's gone now. I'm
looking. No.
It's trying
maybe Missy deleted it.
Yeah, Missy's back. So
maybe it was a comment that Missy's like, no, you're not asking that.
That's true, and that's why we have a moderator. It did seem pretty edgy. That's why I wanted to address it.
Oh, what was it about? Do you know what was the general consensus of it?
Yeah, they were asking if something about our involvement with Lori, or we just let Lori go. Because we were close to Lori and we let Lori go, and I didn't. Of course, there's no context to it, but I wanted to comment on it because remember, Lori was an adult when all this happened, not in our daily lives. We weren't in this. So it's not like this is that question. It's much like I had a family member once that we were talking, and my daughter, who was 30-something years old at the time, still is, and they said, she talked about a movie she saw, and this adult, a real churchy person, said, Rex, you let your daughter watch that movie? I said, she's 34 years old. What do you think? I'm in her house all the time, governing what movies she watched? My chance to parent her in that regard has long left the train station.
Yeah, so I've been criticized. Our family's been criticized for not doing something to help Lori. Obviously, I was the one that saw it more than everybody else, tried to bring attention to it. Nobody else wanted to listen to me. But even again, if as an adult, what do? Go to Lori's house, tie her up, hide her out somewhere so she can't hurt anybody. She hadn't hurt anybody. You didn't think she was going to try to kill anybody at this point. Nobody knew what her intentions were. You could say, Lori, you need to go get help. And then she says, no, I don't. Then what do you do? What is your solution with that? People that blame us for you needed to go do something for Lori. Like what can we do to force her? We go into her house, tie her up, and then go to jail. I mean, I don't understand some people that look at the Monday morning quarterbacks and they play this all the time and like, you guys should have done this or you should have done that, and you weren't there. You didn't know how. I don't think you understand any of it, to be honest with you, if you think we could have done something.
Yeah, there's so much of that. And people talking now about, about Melanie. We love Melanie. She's a family member. We see the same reports. We have the same information you do. We have the same questions. But it's not like Melanie's going to confide in us or talk with us, or we can go over and find out what happened or what's in her mind. I don't know why people think that because you are a relative of someone that you have control over their mind or situation, or that our situations like yours might be with a certain member of your family.
Right.
So I always try to find out. Well, I was going to bring that comment up. I was going to ask about, what the meaning was behind it. Did they really think that we could have gone to Lori's house and controlled her thinking or way of doing things? I don't get that mentality, I guess, is what I'm saying. And so I'll put up the positive one about us, Adam, because...
Oh, we got a positive one. Yes.
Oh, all of these are positive. These people are so loving and good.
We do have a great community.
Yeah, we rarely get a comment that's negative about us. But Harriet Bass says, Rex, I think you and Adam have been doing positive things to cope with this situation by looking for the positive in a very negative situation. And I'll say, in response to that, I'll put that back on everyone that's listening here, because this is why we are doing it. We are doing it because of your response to it and your positivity and your support and you sharing your silver linings and things that are positive in your lives, even after severe trauma in your lives, because everyone has that in their life. No one is spared.
So there's a fight going on. I see this. Somebody is like, you knew Lori was sick and you didn't. So there's people saying, Lori, they didn't. It's funny how some people really feel like, well, you guys should have done something when, to Lori to stop her from doing all the things that she was doing. And none of us had a clue what was in her mind or what her and Chad had planned, or especially when she cuts everybody off in the family at some point and nobody knows anything. And I would love to hear, what is this girl's name? Let me go back. Marcella, or what's her name? There's some lady on here that's just going off on us. and I'm just like, really, what would you do? I would love to hear what your solution would be if you knew your family member was mentally ill.
You're too late. Missy banned someone. So
maybe that was her. Maybe that was her.
And we appreciate Missy, because we've already found out on this community, people can accuse us of, cutting people out that have a different opinion. And to a degree, we do cut people out on occasion like this, but it's when people are mean, when we feel they are mean-spirited. And so Missy's doing her best to interpret what we feel mean-spirited is, because the rest of the community has already told us many, many times over, they don't want that in this community. And we don't either.
They're saying trolls be trolls. Yeah, who knows if you're a troll or not a troll. If you have your own thoughts, there's fine. If you have your own thoughts, I would love for her to say, here's what I would have done in your situation. I would have loved to hear what she had to say.
Yeah,
I sound like my cousin Vinny. I would love to hear this.
So we appreciate different opinions, and I think we entertain different opinions a lot, because religion comes up quite often. People are still kind of good-naturedly laughing at us, Adam, for still being members of the church we're members of, which is the same as the church that Lori was a member of.
Right, exactly.
So they're laughing at us for being naive, and we can handle that. It's just
okay. So here's a good post. That explains everything. Charles told the police that Lori was mentally ill and needed to get an evaluation. Lori went to a professional, got an evaluation, and passed with flying colors. So then what do you do, Miss Lady? Okay, that's enough. I'm good now. I like to argue with some of these people.
Yeah, it is. At this point, it's kind of entertainment for us, isn't it?
Yeah, is it time to get to Brian? Because I know he's sitting there chomping at the bit, waiting to jump in on some of this stuff. I guarantee he's got things to say.
Okay, well, we may go back to a couple comments as we go with Brian, but let's find out more about Brian and his experience in mental health, his experience in life, and his experience with equine therapy. Brian, what can you tell us about you and your work?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I've enjoyed it so far. Got a lot of questions already.
You've probably seen the comments, Adam. A couple of people, or Brian, a couple of people have asked, is Brian at Rex's house? Because we got
the same background.
I have no home. Right? So
that's funny.
Yeah.
I'll just confuse the issue a little bit more here.
There we go. I'll walk over and play the piano here in a moment. So
I like it.
What my background, been in the mental health industry since 1992, working with mainly adolescents, but I've worked with some adults as well. And we've used a lot of different modalities. One that's always a point of interest is the equine therapy with horses, but there's a lot of others as well, and willing to talk about all those. Also engaged in coaching. I've coached wrestling for a long period of time and football. Prefer wrestling as more of my sport, but I like all sports, even pickleball. I think it's really
Yes.
cool. Yeah, that you. I've got to master that. I may need some lessons because I'm pretty competitive. So when I haven't got that one down, so I
Well,
may have
I'm
to challenge
terrible
it.
at wrestling. I tried it one time in high school and I got thrown to the mat and smashed. I was like, I'm not doing this thing.
Yeah. So currently just working, running a couple treatment centers and doing some outpatient work. I have in the past, did some wilderness therapy. So did a little bit of everything, but still want to do more. So open to always growing and learning. It's always fun for me. So
Awesome. So you've heard Rex and I talk about Lori's situation. We talked a little bit about that situation. On a therapy side, what do you see, or what kind of things would you respond to any of that?
yeah. From a therapy side, what is therapy, right? I mean, because everybody's everybody's a therapist, right? Everybody's therapizing. I mean, if I consider it maybe a soft science, maybe, because we're the only physician that talks about the brain but never touches any of the organs, right? All the other physicians. So,
Yeah.
um, again, go back to the, question of how did she get here? You mentioned that she snapped. What does snap mean? What did you see? Obviously, you've probably been asked us several times of what behaviors did you see that changed that made you kind of go, that's a little bit different, that's a little bit odd, and what do I do about it, and do I do anything, right? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
adults, right? And so and how much, like you say, how much can you do? In my experience, people are wanting everybody to kind of do an intervention or gather people around, or at least make people aware, and which is all good, but at the same time, if you're dealing with somebody that's very good at lying, has got some charisma, that knows how to navigate and manipulate, very hard to nail down until something
Mm-hmm.
bad happens, and then
Yeah.
everybody goes, "Oh, I saw these things," or "Oh, I should have this or that and the other." Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? As I always say, but
Yes. Yeah.
um, it's just unless you're there all the time supervising that person or seeing their behaviors and tracking them, and nobody has time for that in their adult life because they're raising kids and family and whatnot, and hoping everybody is trying to be safe and trying to be good. We shouldn't have to ask people to be good, but we're trying to do all those things. um, but it would take more of in my mind, more of a person to watch her constantly to see, hey, there's some paranoia here, delusional stuff, or just some odd behaviors that could be dangerous or
So
harmful.
when Lori goes to the psychiatrist here in Arizona, like she did, the defense had 3 that interviewed her. They all said that she had, I forget what it's called, delusional something something
Mhm.
order. And then the other prosecution one said that she didn't have it, and I know both sides wanted their side to win with that because the whole case goes on that. Even though Lori doesn't want to go to she doesn't want, she'd rather be in prison than go to a psych ward or whatever,
Mm.
a
Mm.
mental hospital. So how does one psychiatrist say she has this and another one says she doesn't? Like, is there a
Yeah.
breaking point? Is there something in an interview? Are there questions? Is
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. I'm not either one of those, but my experience is, is there's a, series of questions, and depending on where that client's coming from, right, they may lie or sort of lie, sprinkle some truths in at that time, or may in this mode say something different. So it can skew kind of a little bit of your, what the outcome could be. I don't know the whole situation, but I look at how she got there and maybe what she's done. So was she delusional for years at a time, or does she know what she was doing up to a point of, all the way to a death? I mean, you look at some of these other situations, the situation in Cedar City that happened with, and even some of these other ones in Utah where people kill their kids and their spouse,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are they delusional? Well, you would think that, yeah, to that point, because how could you kill your own kids, right? But
Yeah.
what got them to the point that so angry or paranoid or jealous that it didn't matter anymore what I did? And maybe for that moment I was delusional, or I was upset and I just in a rage, and this happened. Um, Are they
I think
always that way?
I think that theirs was a plan. Like,
Yeah.
Chad had this plan. God's coming and we're gathering 144,000, and they bought into it. They thought everything. When Chad says, these are demons, they're bad spirits, we got to get rid of them. They were on board with that because I think that they really thought that was going to happen, that they thought God was coming back, and they were in Hawaii waiting for God to come back, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And just what I hear, I was like, these are planned events or planned, it's places where they're going, what they're doing, so thought through, right? And so then it comes to the thing, well, these are thoughtful plans so she could stand trial, because these are plans being made, or, and she's saying, right, stand, let me do trial, let me do it, let me be, because she probably is very capable, or thinks she's very capable and sounds like she's capable. But
so when she was in Arizona and Charles like, hey, she needs to get a psych eval. This was way before anything else. And she goes in there and the person who evaluated her said she is fine. How does somebody delusional, somebody who's a little off the wall, the things that she said were just wacky, the way her eyes and the way she does stuff, everything is just off. Like, how does a psychiatrist stand in front of her, ask her questions, and then say, oh yeah, she's perfectly fine?
Yeah. And again, I don't know what kind of space she was in, but if she could present that she's fine and control those things, she could be fine. It could, the time that they met and the series of questions, it could come off just fine. And then the next day somebody can do something horrible. It happens quite a bit. For me, again, when I deal with anybody, right? Clients, non-clients, friends, family, wrestlers, athletes, I like to see when they're emotionally stressed, where they go, right? Because when there's some emotional stress that's taking place, we all choose to go somewhere healthy or unhealthy based on our experience, our trauma experience, based on our life experience. And that's kind of, to me, kind of a measuring stick of like, oh, you're stressed out, you're going here. Rex, you mentioned, that Adam, you're doing pickleball, which is a healthy outlet from being whatever it is, versus drugs, sex, rock and roll, chocolate. We all get emotionally stressed and go somewhere immediately. Some are healthy, some are unhealthy, some are bad, worse than others. And so it's like, why do you go to pickleball? Why didn't you go somewhere else? Why didn't Brian go eat, a tub of chocolate or something like that? And so it's interesting that biology always wins, right? You're going back to when I was stressed when I was younger, or whatever it was, this is what gave me comfort, whether it was healthy or unhealthy. My job is to disrupt the unhealthy coping mechanism, right? Why are we going here? That's unhealthy. This is what's happening. We do what's called an addiction versus effort, because it does take effort to deal with a lot of, unhealthy, traumatizing things, and the effort sticks.
So you help teens or kids that have gone through troubled times, and then you do the equine therapy with them? Or
yeah, we do the equine therapy. That's just one modality in that. And the reason we choose that is because, horses, as we know, don't speak, but they mirror and match your language. And so it's, I can walk up to a horse and it may not come to me, and the client may say, what's wrong with the horse? And I just say, what's wrong with you? Right. Because they're just reading your energy. And we do a lot of activities that help the client be more aware of their energy, non-verbally, mainly, because with the horses, that's what they're reading. All the emotion is nonverbal. And so we may be saying, verbalizing, this is who I am and how I feel, but your nonverbals are giving you away completely, right? Because that's just 100% what you're feeling. And the horses feel that. And so you've got to learn to be more aware of what I'm presenting and where I'm at. Otherwise, that horse reads that, and you see their behavior reflect from your anxiety or from your energy of negative energy. That horse will react to that, and you may not be saying anything, and the kid will be like, what's going on? And I'm like, what's going on with you inside? And what's the trouble? What's the conflict? And so when they become more aware of what's going on inside, it's just nice to get that kind of sense and slow down and take that look, because we're moving pretty fast in life and distracted by a lot of things that we're not even aware of the energy or message we're sending out. But horses pick up on that.
That's awesome.
A good reminder of wait a minute, right? Maybe I don't present as well as that I think I do, or that I'm living this fake lie or this facade of trying to fit in, but I'm really not fitting in.
I want to see what happens when I walk up to a horse to see what they do, because I'm going to try to hug it and pet its head and that
Yeah,
stuff.
if you got good energy, it'll work. They feel your heartbeat.
If I walk up just bawling, sobbing, crying, will they run from me, or will they feel sorry for me?
If that relationship's there, they'll come up and soothe you, right? I mean, if they get to know you and know that your intention is good.
Yeah.
But they can feel your heartbeat within about 3 feet away if your heart's
my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so they're really interesting animals to work with. Very fun, but very dangerous as well, because they can get spooked pretty well. And one of the activities that we do is we put you in a round pen. We put horses in a round pen. A lot of people don't understand, why do you put them in a round pen? And if you put them in a square pen, they've got corners, right? And that's where the horses will stop and hide. And along like people, if there's corners, we'll kind of hide and avoid. But you put them in a round pen, there's constant movement, so it kind of forces the work to take place in a healthy way. I mean, we can stop it if we needed to, but there's a lot of things in there that help kind of make that relationship naturally happen. So it's kind of fun to watch with the student or the adult and the horse, and
nice.
They mirror and match each other's anxiety, because the horse is anxious as well in a round pen with a crazy human, right? So
yeah, crazy human. That's what we are. Rex, you got questions for him?
Yeah, I'm wondering, when you talk about horses getting spooked, is there a situation where they get spooked off the person's energy? Spooked like run away from them or attack them, or do they react? Is there a type of energy where they react that strongly to the person?
Yeah, they won't. I mean, if they won't naturally come to you, but if they feel unsafer as they come closer, and then if your energy goes up or negative energy, it may, kind of slow down or look away, or their ears pin back. We say you have to get your eyes and ears. If the horse's eyes and ears are on you, if they're pinned back, their ears are pinned back, it's probably not a good idea. That they're still feeling some negative energy there. When you're working with them, if they're kind of not, they've got their temperament, their personalities. If they're kind of chomping at you a little bit, there may be something that's bothering them as well as with you, that they're kind of trying to figure out, how to work together. When you're riding a horse, right, you want to be in harmony. And when the rider's on top and he's trying to control the horse, that horse just says, "Get off me," right, and bucks you off because you're trying to control. Right. And so there's a lot of pressure and release, when to put pressure, when to release, kind of like parenting as well. Is just, when do I push a little bit and pull off? Same with the horse. The thing that's fascinating is you can't talk it, right? It's a feeling. It's that connection with the horse. And so
I'm wondering if horses and dogs are like related somehow, because I know for me, I when I was married 25 years, whatever it was, that we always had a dog, and every time I came home, my dogs would just love me unconditionally, and I would just sleep with them, hold them, pet them all the time, and I just got so much I think relief and love and therapy, I think, just from my dog. But I'm wondering if dogs and horses are around the same, because anytime you're upset, your dog knows you're upset and they come curl next to you, and it's like it's such a great, animals can be such a great therapy tool.
Yeah.
You and Judy girl are on the same wavelength, because that was her comments too.
Oh, really?
Psychologist who had a standard poodle trained as a therapy dog is just what you needed. Brian, do you do you said equine therapy is just one modality. Do you deal with other animals too?
Well, yeah, a lot of our ranch settings, our treatment centers are ranch settings where we have them take care of animals, take care of dogs, chickens, cats, because we think there's value in building empathy for, those animals. It help us build that empathy. As far as dogs go, there's a lot of animal assisted therapy with dogs. Labradoodles are really good. So if they don't want to do horses, they can do dogs. Everybody says, what's the difference between that? Dogs are very loving. What I've noticed, it doesn't mean that's, out there, is that you can be mean to a dog and they still keep coming back to you. You can be mean to a horse, they're not coming back. They can choose.
Wow. So there is a difference. Yeah, that's a big difference.
Yeah. The horse chooses to leave that relationship, right? I'm not going to engage with you because you treat me bad. Like a dog, you can treat it poorly, whatever, and it'll still kind of like come to you, or is it okay to come to you? A horse will be like,
Yes.
I can choose to leave this unhealthy relationship. I don't have to hang out with you.
Yeah,
Right?
Rex talks about this all the time. It's like you have to have boundaries with
Yeah.
when you forgive people.
Yeah.
And in relationships, you got to have, there's conditions on that.
Yeah. And that's why we like using some horses and dogs and animals for that attachment piece, is how do I attach healthy to an animal or to a person, right? Because if I treat a person poorly, or if I lie to you, that's going to change my interaction with you to a certain degree. I still like you, but but my interaction may be a little bit different because I can't really trust you, or you've lied to me. But it doesn't mean, I dislike you or anything like that. But people interpret that as like, oh, you treat me different now. You do it. Well, yeah, because you lied to me, but I still like you. I don't. But yeah, it does affect and impact the way that we interact now, because you chose to take this path. It has nothing to do with, I'm not racist or mad or anything like that. It's just I have to be more cautious or be more aware that this is not a full relationship here, if that makes sense. And so,
yeah, the way we say it here on the show is love can be unconditional, but relationships are not.
yeah.
We all have conditions on all relationships.
Yeah.
And so that's just part of life. Brian, could you share an example of someone that's gone the full cycle, where you've introduced them to equine therapy or whatever therapy you want to choose, and talk about their healing, how it healed them, and what the result was?
Yeah. So you bet. Great question. So a lot of the clients that will come in that have poor impulse control and just lack of empathy. I need to get what I want, the selfish piece, give it to me now, or, the lack of empathy is like, I don't care. It's all about for me. And so when they start to learn to take care of others, animals, dogs, other peers in their group, you start to build that empathy back, and to kind of, decrease the impulse control. Is when you're dealing with human to human, it's different than dealing with, your phone or computer, because there's no human element in there. And so, with the human can say, no, hang on, wait a moment, where I can just push a button, get what I want. And so when you switch from that to human interaction, animal interaction, there's reality to that, and there's a better connection to that. And so you watch it, once you connect with that and work and care for an animal or a person or somebody in your group, you'll start to, your brain begins to rewire and kind of, get those oxytocins fired off to like, hey, I care for this person or this thing. We start out with like fishes or plants, right? Because if they do die, it's not catastrophic, but, and then when you move into bigger animals, if they do die, that's a big deal, right? And so we give them the whole cycle of life in the animal life, if, from birth to the end of, here's what you need to do to feed this animal to keep it alive. If not, they could die, and that's could be on you, right? That's just the cycle of life. Same with, with babies that are born, right? They cry because they can't speak, and they cry for attention, for food, for whatever. And if nobody came, when the baby cried, that deals with a lot of, attachment issues, is nobody responding to someone that needs help. And so that kind of gets you distance from people and kind of builds kind of a void there. And so we're trying to connect that void through those processes of modalities. And then you see them go through life or go through this cycle about 16 months, and they start to care for others. They start to, put their needs below that person in their group, really take care of the animal. And you just see a whole different confidence in them that I actually enjoy working with humans and human life and respect, so you see that connection finally make. But if it's been wired differently, if you're raised in trauma and that wasn't there, that just rewires your brain to something different. It's all about survival.
Brian, let me ask you a question. Like situations in court, like when a judge, assesses somebody's situation and says, okay, well, you're going to be ordered to a certain amount of hours of therapy. You got to do this, and this. Do any judges know about equine therapy? Has that ever been something like a court order that, you get a kid that comes to you court order to be able to help with their therapy, or are judges not on board on that?
Well, judges, I can't speak for them all, but they are on board for therapy, right? And so I would guess they would be careful on how they say that. Insurances are not on board for equine therapy.
Oh, insurances are
So,
insurances are on board with anything.
right. So if a judge were to order that, that would be cool if he specifically said you need equine therapy, right, or something like that, because that would be some nice literature, right?
Yeah.
That you could use. But it's mainly, hey, you need some sort of treatment. If equine therapy is a part of that, I mean, they'll say stuff like that, but mainly it's just a general, what type of treatment, this is the type of treatment, or go to this treatment center, or this treatment modality would be helpful, or what they found helpful. Or they'll refer you to a program or a therapist of what they think would be helpful. So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Any other questions on there, Rex?
Yeah, I'm making a connection here. See, there's so many parents, especially mothers, listening to Lori's case, and it just fries our mind, because these people you're caring for, that creates that bond, you're caring for them, you love them so much, and to get to the point where you would kill them just is such a radical departure from that bond. What can happen to cause it?
Yeah, it could be a lot of things of, like, the more, I mean, you can disconnect from human life, disconnect from humans. I mean, you can portray that you're caring for people and do the routine things, if that makes sense. Of, it looks to the public that I'm caring, I'm doing the feeding, you got clothes on your back, you're doing that. But what about, let's go another layer, let's scuba dive a little bit. Do you really care if you're just doing these routinely daily living things that looks like you're a caring mother? And mothers have, fathers have that, we just naturally think as humans, well, you just should care about your kids, right? I mean, we just think that, but I don't know what's going on inside, if there's something else going on. And usually you'll find out that how they really feel is a little bit different than what's being portrayed. It's kind of that fake it kind of thing. I'm just faking it, or putting out this facade, but deep inside, here's kind of what I really feel. Whatever it's a religious conflict, if it's a trauma conflict, if it's whatever the conflict may be. And maybe I don't really like being a mother, right? But I've been a mother for 30 years, but maybe I don't like it. Maybe I don't like religion. But we kind of get into these patterns and just live them, because that's what we're doing, right? And then finally, somehow, or something happens, emotionally stressed, and I'm just, I'm tired of it. And then you see just the extreme opposite of maybe what's been brewing for a while, not just happenstance, but I mean, it's, as humans, we get in these patterns, right? I mean, we're pretty, pattern-like people, tribe-like people. It doesn't mean we like being parents or whatever it is, our job, right? So,
I think we like being parents. I just feel like there's times where it's very difficult to be a parent. And it can be super rewarding being a parent, but there's times where I know that people just get, as a parent, your kids stress you out so bad,
right,
because you care about them so much, you love them so much, you hate seeing your kids do things that are going to cause them pain, and you're trying to tell them don't do that. And as a parent, it's frustrating when they don't listen to you, and you got to watch them go through these painful moments in life where you're like, if you could just listen to me, I've been through this. This is what's going to happen. But obviously we got to let our kids go through their own growing pains.
Right.
But that could be, I could see, some frustration moments being a parent too. But I think for the most part, it's really great.
Yeah. It's, I mean, parenting is definitely fun, frustrating, all those things.
A little bit of everything. You get a little bit of everything.
And we didn't get a parenting course, nor did
right. It doesn't come with a book. That's the funny thing, is like, yeah, that's why we all parent differently. That's why you'll be at Walmart and you'll see a lady just laying into her kids, and you're like, what are you doing? You're in public, and this is and then you judge them as a parent. You don't know what their background is. You don't know if their parents did that to them, and this is just a cycle that goes over and over again. And there's all those things that call break the cycle from what your parents did to you, and then you don't want to do the things that they did, and you want to take the good and get rid of the bad. There's a lot that actually goes into it.
So Brian, let's put you on the spot here. So we only have 5 minutes left, and one of our optimists, the people in our community, asked, Anna Franco, a well-loved member of our community, asked, question for Brian. Because we're coming up to the holidays, right? Tough time for family members. Any recommendations when adults are estranged from their siblings or older parents or their children in their 20s or 30s? Think of the dynamics, especially around the holiday time, why that's so hard for people.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations? You've probably dealt with that constantly.
Well, like what are they asking? Like, what do you do during the holidays, or what?
Yeah, if you're depressed or
They don't
upset, or
bring up the holidays, but when they're estranged,
Yeah.
what can you do when you're estranged from otherwise close family members?
Yeah.
We have several strained relationships in our family just from the Lori situation.
Yeah.
Not everyone sees it or experiences it the same way.
Yeah. And for me, I would just, it's hard for, I don't know if it's hard or not, but I would continue to reach out and show care and concern regardless of what's going on, because at some point they're going to look back at that, and it may feel like it's never going to end, but I would always offer kind support, love. The thing is, it just doesn't happen on our timelines. If that makes sense, we want it to happen on our timelines.
right?
And I just think if you are consistent in working and showing love, care, and concern, regardless of the circumstances, that's what people want, a feeling of belonging, right? I mean, everybody wants to belong, right? They want to be, and all my clients, I ask, what are you doing that for? Is because I want to fit in. I want to belong. I want somebody to love me, choose me because they love me for who I am, not because of what I do, what I drive, where I work, or anything like that. But somebody chooses me to love me for who I am, and that's what it seems like 99% of my clients are looking for. Is I just wish somebody would love me for who I am, choose me for who I am, not because of what I'm trying to be, but for who I am. And we get caught up in doing all these other things, and then I see, and people say that's really not me, and I go, I believe that. Who are you?
Right.
Who is it that you are? And they'll kind of open up and say, this is who I am. But if I'm honest and who I am, nobody likes me, or I'm made fun of, or I'm compared. There's a lot of comparisons. And so the world is a mean, crazy place, right? And so I think that if we can show more love, care, and concern, regardless of the circumstances, we don't know, right?
So I think it's the same correlation as prayer. You ask God, please, can I have this, or can you make this happen? And then you sit and wait. You tell your kids, hey, you text them, how are you? What are you up to? And then you're sitting by your phone waiting for the text to come 3 days later. Oh, yeah, I just saw this. You're like, no. Or, and God answers your prayer and it's like 2 years later, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot I even prayed about that.
Yeah. Well,
so you, like you said, it's not on you. It's not on our time. If we, we're in such a demand society, like we want things right now, even more now than ever with phones and all that stuff.
Yeah. That doesn't help when you can do that, but that human interaction delays that and teaches us some patience.
Patience is so difficult sometimes.
I do like what your comment earlier, Adam, when you said, about your case. If I could go back to that, do I go? Do I not? I'm avoiding. The biggest thing humans do is avoid, right? Yeah. I mean, it's because fear and pain are the two things that keep us from moving forward, right? Because it's tough. I mean, it hurts.
Yeah.
But if we can look, I always say the obstacle is the way. And that, we can go around it, underneath it, but to go through it is what's going to cause the true growth, so to speak. And so,
I think for me, there was a time where it was so emotionally, like I've never been through that emotional pain before in my life. I remember being by myself and just everything came crashing down at one time. I was like, so now I try to avoid anything that's going to get me anywhere near where that was.
Yeah.
So if that's talking about this or this or this, I'm a wimp. I just avoid it and then go play pickleball. But I know at some point, and maybe it's a year from now, maybe it's next week, maybe it's 10 years, I don't know. Yeah. But at some point, I'm gonna have to face it all and go through that one more time to get over that hump. I understand that, and being in court may force me to do that.
But don't you think, Adam, you're facing it every time you talk about it? And we've been talking about it a lot. Can you give yourself a little credit that you aren't completely avoiding it?
Well, yeah, I'm not completely avoiding it, right? But I mean, going back to certain moments in my life, I try to avoid those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do a good job. I'm just looking at it, you do a good job. Most people could get defensive and whatnot, but you seem to absorb it and handle it as you can. So I think that's pretty.
I just want to just figure this out, and it's been a difficult thing to figure out.
Well, Brian, these are great insights. I just love it. I love the comments I've been reading here from our optimists. It's such a positive, loving community. You've added a lot to it today. And a quick announcement before we sign off here. We're going to do our regular podcast next Friday, not Saturday, but we said we'd do a podcast once a month, and then we would do more when we have a good guest that can contribute to our community like Brian has done. So we'll do podcasts whenever we have a guest like Brian.
I'll come back if you want me.
Yeah, we'd
bring some horses with you. At least let me look at horses since I can't hug on them.
I'll take you out. We can take you out. So
yeah, Adam, come to Fort Worth. We'll go out there. And
are you in Fort Worth, Texas?
I'm not. I'm in Utah. So
Utah.
Why did I say Fort Worth?
Because that's where you're from. That's where Rex lived.
Before.
Yeah, that's where they have a lot of horses in Fort Worth.
I'm here to St. George, not Fort Worth. But Brian and I used to be neighbors, and we ran into each other at a bookstore not too long ago, and so I was glad Brian was willing to.
Yes, thank you, Brian. That was great. Good insight.
But back to, so we will have our regular first of the month podcast next Friday, 4:30 Mountain, 3:30 Pacific, so 6:30 Eastern time, but that's on Friday. So we'll look forward to talking to people then. We'll talk about whatever's come up, maybe reactions to this podcast, reactions from the person that got banned from the podcast. Who knows what we'll be
and it's going to be the day after Halloween, so we'll both be in our Halloween costume the day after.
Okay, I'll be fine
eating
with that.
Candy, so much candy,
and we'll be on a sugar high. Great, great.
Yes. It's going to be a great show, costumes and candy.
But thank you to Brian. Thank you to Missy, our moderator, and of course our wonderful optimist. Check out Colby's podcast, Kimberly and Lindsay's podcast, Mike King's podcast, if you're into the Mountain Meadows Massacre stuff. And of course, stick with us any chance you get. We certainly love our community. Any closing words, Adam?
No, I don't really have any closing words. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys on Friday if you come back.
All right. And Brian, we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Okay, thank you for having me on. Nice to meet you, Adam.
You too, Brian.
Yeah.